Welcome to today's Explainer. So, we're going to be looking at an invisible threat today, one that's quietly, but really rapidly, reshaping our entire planet. We're tracking this wild shift from what kind of just feels like local inconveniences right now to a full blown global crisis. We're talking about the very real prospect of the world's wells literally running dry.
Let's just jump right in by confronting a pretty terrifying reality. Imagine if our water were to run out. There's no way to survive. Is this our future? I mean, it sounds exactly like the opening voiceover of some dystopian sci-fi movie, right? But guys, this isn't fiction. This is the exact literal question that real communities are asking right now as this crisis knocks right on their front doors.
Okay, part one, the illusion of plenty.
It's honestly crazy to think about the cognitive dissonance we're dealing with today. Take idyllic coastal towns like Mendocino, California, places you'd normally expect to be lush and beautiful, right? Or Lauenau in Germany, a place historically famous for its super reliable wells. But the harsh reality on the ground? Mendocino is dealing with this eerie barrenness, relying entirely on trucked-in water just to survive. And over in Lauenau, fire departments are literally rationing out their final supplies because the taps are actually failing.
And you see, what starts out as an environmental issue super quickly spirals into a human emergency. I mean, restaurant owners in Mendocino are having to lock their bathrooms to the public. Why? Because they simply don't have enough water to run them normally. We're talking about basic sanitation and local economies being directly threatened, and this is happening in some of the absolute wealthiest parts of the world.
Which brings us to Section 2, the invisible groundwater crisis. Now, what's incredibly fascinating here is how scientists are actually measuring a crisis that we can't even see with our own eyes. They're using some truly mind-bending satellite tech. So using data from the NASA GRACE mission, you've got these two satellites orbiting the Earth, basically acting as a giant scale in the sky. They're up there detecting tiny gravitational tugs. So when a specific region loses massive amounts of underground water, it actually exerts slightly less gravitational pull. It is phenomenal technology, but it's tracking a truly terrifying trend. But here is the number that really blew my mind. 7 times. While we, understandably panic about the visible shrinking of immense surface reservoirs, places like America's Lake Powell, our vital, unseen underground aquifers are being depleted 7 times faster. It's like we're just draining our ecological savings account, and we don't even realize we're doing it.
And hey, this isn't just some American desert problem. 2.4 cubic kilometers. That is the sheer volume of water that Germany is losing every single year. To put that into perspective, satellite data shows us that over just a 20-year period, Germany has lost the equivalent volume of the entire Lake Constance. That's a massive, systemic deficit, and it's happening completely out of the public eye.
All right, moving on to Section 3, coping with aridification.
So, we really need to completely reframe how we think about this whole situation. Aridification. Experts are warning us that we absolutely have to stop thinking of this as just some 20-year mega drought that's eventually going to break. No, we have to accept a pretty terrifying new reality here. We're entering a permanent state of transition to a drier climate. The baseline, it's shifted forever. Now, desert cities are desperately trying to adapt. Take Las Vegas. Since 2002, they've added nearly 800,000 residents to their population. Yet somehow, they've impressively reduced their Colorado River water consumption by 23%. So how'd they do it? Well, by ripping out ornamental grass and deploying literal around-the-clock water police to go out and find residents for watering on the wrong days. But as impressive as that strict conservation is, experts are warning that these regional fixes, they're really just a drop in the ocean against the overwhelming math of aridification.
And this anxiety is reaching the highest echelons of wealth, too. Get a load of this quote from Gary Kremen. Yes, the guy who actually invented Match.com, who happens to be a Silicon Valley water official now. He recently said, I think we're going to have some epic fighting here. Kind of an internal civil war over water. I would be panicked. Think about that. Even in Silicon Valley, the literal hub of human ingenuity and immense wealth, officials are waking up to a hard truth. You cannot buy or import water if there's no water left anywhere else to import.
Let's take a look at Section 4, global migration and conflict. The macro-level cascading effects we're looking at here are just staggering. For about 6,000 years, humans have lived in this relatively narrow band of ideal climatic conditions. But that bond, it's shifting. And it's a simple fact. When water goes, people go. We're looking at a projected 3 billion climate migrants by the year 2070. 3 billion.
That level of mass movement pretty much guarantees that international conflicts over resources are going to become absolutely inevitable.
What's truly tragic is the sheer frustration of the scientists who actually saw this coming. Hydrologists like J. Familietti were desperately trying to warn top defense officials way back in 2009. They brought alarming satellite data straight to the Pentagon, straight to Congress. And then by 2011, we saw unrest in Syria, triggered in part by these devastating droughts driving up cereal prices. These scientists went completely out of their way to warn authorities years before regions started devolving into chaos, only to be, well, completely dismissed.
And as scarcity grows, so does extreme inequality. Just look at Kabul, Afghanistan, where the wealth gap literally dictates survival right now. You've got richer areas using technology to pump the last of the dwindling groundwater, which basically leaves the poorer suburbs completely bone dry. Some residents there only see water flow from a tap for 1 single hour every 12 days. Can you imagine? It's driving severe illnesses among children. We are already seeing the devastating health impacts of this unequal access, and it serves as a really grim preview for the rest of the world.
Finally, Section 5, a post-apocalyptic future. Think about the Salton Sea in California. It used to be this thriving freshwater vacation paradise, but today, it's a degraded, drying landscape. Honestly, standing at the edges of dying bodies of water like this gives us a haunting, incredibly visceral glimpse right into our own backyards. It shows us exactly what happens to a community when the water finally just runs out. So, I'll leave you with this stark reality to ponder today. If water is literally the lifeblood of our cities, what happens when the fight for it turns into a war? Once global politics is dictated entirely by the basic, desperate fight for human survival, how on earth are we going to adapt? It's a heavy question, I know, but it's one we can really no longer afford to ignore. Thanks for joining me on this explainer today, and I'll catch you next time.